Cram criminals together and what do you get? Concentrated criminality.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. I am very keen to talk about a particular author and his books more than some of the other authors that I read, because there doesn't seem to be a lot about this author spoken about, and yet he is a very revered classic science fiction author and someone that I do recommend. And I'm not really sure why he's not spoken about a lot. My only guess is that he never really wrote a book that was like the book that put his name on the map, possibly. But he's in a lot of anthologized collections in, when you look at, Best of Analog or Best of Science Fiction and Fantasy magazine or whatever, he does come up a lot in the short stories. And there's been a film made of one of his stories. He actually wrote a story which, as far as I know, is the first example of that kind of battle royale kind of setup with people killing each other for sport and to gain prestige with the public, that kind of thing, with The Seventh Victim, a short story he wrote ages ago, back in the 60s. But Robert Sheckley, I don't think gets spoken about enough, and I wanted to talk about this book, The Status Civilization. So I've just reread this. I've read most of what I've got in the past, years and years ago, but I'm going to reread the books before I talk about them on the channel again. But I reread this for Rocket Summer, and this came out in 1967. A lot of his most a lot of his best stuff. I was going to say a lot of his most popular stuff, but I don't really know how to gauge that. A lot of his best stuff happened in the 60s. So he was pretty active then. And he has this very distinctive rhythm and a very distinctive approach to how he writes books. It's a very short book. There's only 140 pages or something. Yeah, 144 pages. It's a very short novel, and his books tend to be short. His novels tend to be short, and he wrote a lot of short stories. So he doesn't write huge pieces of work. But I would recommend that you try him out. I think he was a huge influence on Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams he literally denied that he read Robert Sheckley because people asked him. Because a particular book, Dimension of Miracles, I think is definitely very similar to Hitchhikers, but written well before, decades before. And lots of other people, I think, have been influenced by his style. His stuff is very intelligent, but very light and sarcastic and occasionally silly and occasionally satirical, occasionally political, but very subtly and very sharp and to the point as well. One of the things that I think is worth mentioning is I talk a lot about character on my channel. And even though he's one of my favourite authors, he doesn't really develop his characters much, because his characters tend to be, he has this sort of consistent thing, whereas a lot of his characters are kind of sort of aghast in bewilderment while these things are happening around them, and they've got to kind of run along. They're kind of taken along on this ride that's specific to the book. But the main character is often a similar kind of character that is like, what's going on? In the same way that Arthur Dent was in Hitchhikers. So this idea that there is a defined character in there, but they tend to be a bit of an everyman that is just confused by what's happening around them. So that seems to be a bit of a consistent thing with Robert Sheckley. And if you try Dimensions of Miracles, the Mind Swap, the State of Civilization, Immortality Inc., the Alchemical Marriage of Alistair Compton. Several of his books, you'll get that kind of flavour. And also Options. Options is a funny one. Options seems to be easier to find Options than other books, not sure. Dimension of Miracles was only re-released recently, actually, so you might be able to find that in a record shop. Sorry, a bookshop. You won't find it in a record shop. You might find it in a bookshop. Dimension of Miracles, and you can probably order it. And they re-released one of his short story collections as well, among the same imprint. It was a Penguin imprint. So they released Dimension of Miracles and another one. I can't remember what the other one was, but it was his first short story collection. Untouched by Human Hands. That was it. That was released recently again as well, published again. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, his stuff can be hard to find, but I think he's amazing. The State of Civilization is a particularly interesting one, I think, because it's got this sort of political angle to it. Again, quite subtly, and it still has the same, I'd say, farcical nature. A lot of his stuff is like science fiction farces, and you got this farcical element to it that's really strong throughout the book. And if I reveal too much about the surprises in the book, it stops the humor and the bouncy element of surprise. You know, I can't tell you too much about it. And what it says on the back is quite deceiving. It says, a future Earth when one vast and stratified society threatens all who fail to conform. That doesn't get revealed until well later, and it's a very particular way that the conformity is produced. It's a very clever book. Barrett has been found guilty and exiled to serve his sentence on Omega, a prison planet walled by a ring of hovering guardships from which there is no escape. Omega is a world of horror, a savage, ruthless way of life, with its own black religion, sordid morals, and pleasures. But all this is a momentary ordeal, a prelude to return to Earth and the subtle terrors of a new status civilization. It's a really deceptive description on the back, because most of the book is set on Omega, and the world that this prison planet has created for itself by the prisoners that have been left there to just create their own world is fascinating. It's brilliant. It's very clever. It's sometimes very funny, and it's quite perceptive, I think. But it's also completely mad, and there's a kind of a Kafka-esque element to it, because Barrett is constantly confused about what's happening. And there's no let up, and it bounces from one thing to another, where the authorities are saying, well, if you've done this, you need to do this. And, oh, well, I'm sorry that you've now intervened the rules on this planet, and you've now committed a crime. And he's like, what have I done? And then like there's a bit where he has to do this gladiatorial thing, and he's like, he gets promised that if he gets past a certain point, he'll be rewarded for it as some kind of great some honors will be some honors will be bestowed on him. And he's like, yeah, but I'll be dead by then. And then they say, oh yeah, but we are so committed to giving you these honors that it won't matter that you're dead. So things like that, and the way that he writes it is very matter of fact, and so you got this sort of farcical element that's kind of wrapped up in a bit of a Kafka-esque approach to authority. He has no idea why these things are happening. None of it makes sense, and he's like, okay, so if I win that gladiatorial battle, what happens then? Oh well, you'll be put in through this other process that will be determining another thing. And he's like, well, that means surely there was no point in doing the other thing. Oh no, because that gives you this other thing. It's full of that kind of stuff, and the big chunk of the book in the middle is like that. But then when it talks about Earth, again, it's really clever, because he doesn't understand why he's been, well, actually, if I go right back to the beginning, one of the really good things about this book is that he starts off not understanding who he is. He gets told straight away that he gets given a number, 409, and he thinks he's in hospital, but then he gets told he's in prison. So he's got no memory of what happened on Earth, and he's in this prison. And all the way through the book, he's trying to unravel this mystery as well about what happened on Earth, who he murdered, if he did murder someone, who he murdered, and why everyone's memory has been removed about Earth. You know, like once they get put on this prison planet, their memory gets erased, so they don't remember anything about Earth. So he's trying to find out why that's a thing as well. And when you get to Earth, at the end of the book, it's not a spoiler. It really isn't a spoiler the way this is written. When you get to Earth, it's really clever and really good, and it's such a great finish. And what the Earth that Robert Sheckley creates is just a perfect last moment in this book. It's a perfect third act that is quite shocking to the character, and shocking if that was to be an Earth as well. And it kind of finishes with a kind of a bit of a bizarre cliffhanger in a way. I mean, it does resolve itself, but it resolves itself with a raised eyebrow. So yeah, I've tried not to reveal too much, but it's a very unique style that Robert Sheckley creates, I think. That's why I love his stuff so much. And I think it's such a shame that it doesn't get talked about that much. But it's very clever. And I'd recommend it to anyone that reads science fiction. And if you like science fiction with a light touch, but a very intelligent light touch, then you're going to like Robert Sheckley. The State Civilization is brilliant. So there we are. Seek it out. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, everybody. And good luck if this is what Earth turns out like.
Paint me a picture of what it's like to be you. Sit upon your high chair